if you don't give people the space to like explore their point of view and their opinions, even if they're really fucked up, then you don't really give them a chance to ever grow out of them or move out of that space, because people that are in that kind of toxic mindset, they're going to double down when you challenge their point of view. Hi, welcome back to Friend Crush. I'm your host, Amber Akilla. This is my video / podcast series where I talk about stuff and things, cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. You can follow me on Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube, follow the podcast. Hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for tuning in. I'm a little bit hungover, not gonna lie, okay? I went to this dinner thing last night and I was so hungry because I hadn't really eaten properly during the day. I'd also done 2 pole classes and I was really ready to eat proper food when I got there, but we were served drinks first and mostly raw vegetables and crackers with dip in a fancy very well art directed way. And then the main meal was just beef but no carb, and I mean it was fun. And then I also drank a lot of wine and I got home and I was like, I'm actually drunk. And for someone who doesn't really drink that much volume wise, and I guess frequency wise, maybe 1 meal a week I end up having a wine, if that. And when I'm out at the club, I almost don't drink at all anymore. I hate drinking in the club. It's so weird, especially because I'm a DJ, but I've been DJing for so long, been around nightlife for so long, I just want to play music. I don't want to get drunk. Anyway, today's topic is what to do when your political values with your friend start to diverge. Because what I'm going to do for the next few episodes is spend an episode each answering questions or suggestions that I've received from listeners, which I really appreciate you guys sending your thoughts in. And a lot of people, especially girls actually, always apologize for sending me long messages, but I'm like, I love the long message. I love the context. Please don't apologize for sharing your truth. So yeah, this is based off a question that I received recently. I'm going to read it to you. And I think that, I always want to emphasize and remind myself and listeners / viewers that I'm just here sharing my thoughts and my perspective and my opinions as they are in any given moment, but I'm always open to my point of view changing and developing. And it's not about me telling you what to do or telling you what's right or wrong, because I think that ultimately I want to be able to encourage myself and others to do what feels right for them, especially when I get sent a context specific type of question. I don't know the ins and outs of your relationships, so I can only make general observations and hope that it provides you perspective so that you can make whatever decision seems the most authentic to you. It's not about doing what I would do, but maybe just hearing an alternative perspective to then help you decide what you need to do. So I just want to remind you of that and myself. Okay, so the question was, I have a dilemma. I don't know if it's actually a big deal or if I'm being dramatic, but I'm friends with this girl and we've become kind of close over the years. Within the last 2 years, she's become a conservative politically, and within the last few months, she's converted to Christianity also. I have more progressive, liberal / political views, and for a long time, her different views haven't bothered me until recently. Little by little, her views seem to become more and more extreme, in my opinion, and I'm having trouble wondering if our friendship will stay intact. She doesn't seem to have an issue with our friendship or my views, but I have caught myself wondering if it's morally right of me to associate with someone who thinks of trans people in a certain way and doesn't believe in systematic racism in America. Then there was an apology for it being so long, but I needed the context. I like to think that I can be friends with people who have different views/beliefs than me, and we've had a good friendship for the most part. Just recently, it's been making me question things. Also, I'm not a Christian, but I do believe in a higher power. I only mention religion because it seems like many conservatives in the US are Christian. Again, sorry, this was long. Had so many thoughts, and I was like, oh my God, thank you for sharing. Not too long, such a great question. So, what I said to begin with was, I don't think there's a right answer to this because it's really up to you and what kind of people and ideas you want to be around. I personally wouldn't write off someone if they didn't do something egregious, but I also wouldn't go out of my way to be close with them, if that makes sense. On the one hand, I think the way that people are getting radicalized through social media is really dangerous, and I understand how it happens and that people can change their minds. And even if I don't agree with someone else's views, I don't think it's fair to anyone to be friends with people where you feel like you're in a moral dilemma. Like, it's not fair to the person that you're being friends with that you're just being friends with them because you don't want to be a bad person. But it's also not fair to you to be around someone who you don't feel like comfortable to be your authentic self with either, you know? And then I said, I think it must also be especially hard in the US because issues and politics are seen in such black and white terms by a lot of people. And it's also kind of like encouraged by the media as well. So if you happen to have a friendship with someone who is on a different political side, it's almost like radical because you're not in an echo chamber anymore. But then it can also be dangerous if they do some crazy shit. And it's also like not your responsibility to get other people to think the same as you. Even if the way that you or the other person thinks is harmful, like when you're an adult, basically, it's like people are in charge of their own lives and are responsible for their own beliefs and values. And if they're not actively making a choice to have an open mind to other people's point of view, then you really can't force someone to get on board with you, you know? I said, I don't know what you think your friend might be at risk of, but like TLDR, I guess I would write it out if the friendship is valuable to you without getting too invested in what direction it goes. So I think that a lot of the times we're looking for like a straightforward answer, like you should just cut them off because you guys don't agree and what the way that they think is problematic, or you need to convince them that the way that they think is problematic and change their mind because otherwise you're a bad person. But I just think that it's not as simple as like right versus wrong, good versus bad, because even though I don't agree with like a lot of conservative viewpoints, I think that if you don't give people the space to like explore their point of view and their opinions, even if they're really fucked up, then you don't really give them a chance to ever grow out of them or move out of that space, because people that are in that kind of toxic mindset, they're going to double down when you challenge their point of view. Because I think the reason why a lot of people grab on to those sorts of like ideas is because they feel insecure in their own identity and they want to, it's very easy to be validated when you're in that kind of echo chamber and to kind of like project your frustration and anger that exists in your own existence and like project it onto a group of people that you have literally no contact with anyway. Like, it's literally none of your business whether trans people like do or don't deserve to exist. They very much do. And if you have a problem with it, you can simply just not engage with it. You know, like, it's not like people in minorities are going out of their way to inconvenience you or make you feel like a bad person. Why do you need to assert like your point of view on a subset of people who like you don't even come in contact with? You know what I mean? But it's very difficult for people that are in that kind of echo chamber to see things that way. I personally don't understand it because I just find it, I mean, I've never been in that position, so I can't really understand it, but I can sort of see how and why it happens, and it's fucked up. But I think the problem with like quote unquote woke culture as it exists now, is that there is not enough room for like people to be problematic, which is what people are, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum. Like, you are problematic to somebody, and like the sooner you can reconcile with that and then make decisions with intention and awareness, the more freedom you'll have to just enjoy life. Because if you're always worried about hurting other people's feelings and whether or not like what you're doing is or isn't problematic, you won't be able to figure out what is and isn't problematic because you're always afraid of what could be. So you kind of just need to like, and I think for most people, if you're not like a psychopath or a sociopath or like a insane narcissist, you're probably doing okay. You know, you don't need to worry so much, and just sort of like become aware of any prejudices and biases that you might have and do your best to be kind to the people that you come in contact with, you know? I think it's really ironic when people who want to just sort of like exist on some kind of moral high ground, which usually exists because of like, I would say some kind of trauma that they've experienced at the hands of like a person who represents like a group of people to them. You don't realize how you might be hurting people in your inner circle and that you actually come in contact with. And that's like at the cost of you wanting to represent like goodness to a wider group of people that you don't even come in contact with. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah, that was just a random tangent. Anyway, back to the main question. So they replied to my comment saying, "Thank you for your thoughts and inputs. I appreciate it. She hasn't done anything that's been crazy, but she constantly posts political things on her socials and gets into arguments or debates with people that disagree. I feel like because she keeps doing it, it's almost like she's looking for a reaction. But because we may talk about it and it's a type of topic or worded in a way that can easily be misconstrued, especially by opposing people. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it at times. Also, she says that she's happy we're friends and we can talk about our different views on things and it not come between us, but she doesn't actually take my opinion or concerns seriously or look into it the way that I do with her views. It's just because we don't fully yell or argue about these things, it seems okay. And it's just the way that she speaks about people that aren't conservative is very judgmental, which I get. It's hard not to judge, but because I don't lash out on her, I'm assuming she feels comfortable to say certain things around me, even though it rubs me the wrong way. I guess I just need to not be as invested in her like you suggested, because now that I'm typing all this out, I'm realizing how respectful I am of her viewpoints and she isn't of people who hold my values, if that makes sense. And then she replied to my message where I said, even if I don't agree with someone's views, I don't think it's fair to anyone to be friends with people where you're constantly feeling like you're in a moral dilemma. And she said, this is so true. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but the doubts have been pushing the limit, lol. I can't tell if voicing how I feel would make things worse or not, because just avoiding talking about politics altogether would probably help for a little bit, but in the longer term it would still be weird because I know she may be thinking about certain topics. I don't know. I feel like I need to figure out more clearly what I find morally incompatible between me and others for a close friendship. And then I said, you're on the right track, I think, and it's important to sort of be exposed to opposing ideas, but I also feel like you and your inner circle need to have similar values, even if those values might be toxic, like birds of a feather stick together, and you guys don't seem like the same type of bird. I don't know what your ethnicity is, but I feel like growing up around white people, I've had no choice but to need to understand their point of view to survive in social settings. That's me personally. But for most white people / conservatives, entertaining a non-default point of view is just like a mental exercise that they can detach from. So I think the girl that sent me the message is black, just based off like a superficial perusing of her profile. And then she says, my friend is half white, half Mexican. She never really categorized herself as Mexican before she became more political. But now I've noticed she'll say things like, well, I'm Mexican and I don't do X, Y, Z. Since she's able to work or have a decent amount of money, other POCs should, but her mom and dad aren't conservative. And she said before, that's why she's so into this side of politics. Like, just growing up without as many resources or opportunities as others made her upset. Her family didn't work hard enough to do more for her. Which I understand in her case, but also not everyone had the same experience and people deserve some grace. And then she also said, we became friends because we're both trying to do this side hustle. Not many people were doing it at the time, so we were able to connect through that. I guess time has passed and we've grown more into who we are and the differences between us are becoming pretty noticeable. So then I said, I've had a similar experience before with someone where we were just kind of friends because we both had like a common interest in a specific social circle. And she would actually say like the most rogue shit, and not to the same extent that this person is describing, but eventually I got to a point where I realized that the friendship was kind of just circumstantial, and because of our age at the time, we weren't fully developed in who we were, and our paths were just diverging. And as sad as it was, it's also just kind of like part of life. You realize as you get older that not everybody is going to be in your life forever, and that's really sad. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't make the most of your friendships and the relationships while you're in them and while you enjoy them. But I think it is like a painful process to reconcile at any point when a friendship isn't as close as it was before, or, the people that you're becoming just aren't compatible anymore. It is really tough now with the way that people are being radicalized, or that people are having their political views define their personality, basically, or define their identity, as if there aren't more important things in life and in relationships, like, whether you're actually kind to people, whether you are able to facilitate a hot and having fun experience. Like, that is very important to me. And I think that it's not really about like which side of the political spectrum you're on that's going to define who you are. It's actually more about how you treat people in your day-to-day life. And I think that when you are super attached, it's actually more about like how attached you are to your political beliefs, and it being like the core of who you are. The more attached, the people that are extremely attached to their political views defining who they are, I think that is like its own personality trait. It's not like the ideas that you espouse that are your identity. It's like the level of attachment that you have. Because the people that aren't as attached, I feel like they're able to enjoy the present moment, enjoy being hot and having fun, engage in political debate without it defining who they are, without it like making or breaking their day, And I'm not saying that these issues aren't real or that they're not important, but there is a point where talking and talking and arguing only hurts you, like you're just wasting your time and energy and not actually helping the cause that you're arguing about all the time. You know what I mean? And that's what I realized when I was younger and going through my like Asian angst phase, because I was experiencing all this racism and misogyny. I wasn't really like part of any community, or I didn't have people around me that really understood what I was going through or could validate what I was feeling. On top of the fact that I was experiencing racism and misogyny, I was then being invalidated about my experience, and it was extremely frustrating and traumatizing and isolating. And I eventually met a crossroads where it was like, I can keep like talking about this and trying to satirize this part of my life and making it seem like it's me versus them, or I could just focus on having a good time. Like, I could just focus on exploring my own identity in a way that feels good for me, regardless of what other people think. Come in contact with, maintain connections with people that actually care and that actually get it, or at least don't go out of their way to invalidate me, and vice versa. And then naturally the people who are fucking annoying and racist and misogynist, they won't be in my life anymore. Or like the part of my brain that they take up will just get smaller and smaller, to the point where now it's just something that I use to like explain and provide like analogies for experiences, rather than something that gets me like really upset and that I feel like has to define who I am. Those experiences very much inform the way that I see things now and the person that I am now, but I'm not like living my life with that at the center of my being. And I think it's really detrimental to people to live with their traumas or like political identity at the center of what they do, because you won't actually be able to have a positive impact on the people around you, or in regards to these causes when you're so defined by like the negativity associated with them. I think that ultimately being able to empower yourself and others is finding actions and creating experiences that empower people and bring them into the present moment or bring them into a more authentic self, not just determining a good guy versus a bad guy, but that's like levels of awareness, I guess. And not everybody is going to be at the same stage. And I think we need to have grace for that too. Like I said before, if people aren't given the space to be problematic without being like dogpiled onto, even if what they're saying is really fucked up, then they're more likely to double down on what they're saying and then be an even worse presence in society than if they just said what they said and people were like, hey, that's not so cool. But, that's not easy to do, really. It's hard to create spaces like that. And that's why I think that it is radical in a way to be friends with someone who has differing political opinions to you, so you can have a safe space to like discuss and debate and explore different ideas. But if you don't feel like the space is that safe, then maybe it's not really worth it. So it is like a tough line to draw, because I don't think that the world gets better either when people just live in echo chambers, but I don't think that your close friends need to be like constantly challenging your political point of view. And I guess that like people are just not done till they're done. Like they're ready when they're ready to open their mind up to an alternative point of view. And then at other times they're just not. And that's really not up to you to decide, because when I was younger and people were telling me like, you're being too loud about these things and blah, 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 I didn't give a fuck. I was like, this is what I'm going through and I need to go through it so that I can get to the other side. If I don't allow myself the space, even just in private, I think in private, being able to interrogate your own point of view is just as important as being able to do it with people that you're close with in public, whatever. But, if I'm not giving myself the space to feel as angry and as frustrated as I feel, I will never be able to process this and I won't be able to move on. And you don't know how long that's going to take you or someone else, like it took me a long time to get to a point where I was like, I'm not defined by these like toxic friendships that I've been in or these really like traumatic experiences that I've been in. And for some people, it doesn't take them as long. For other people, it might take even longer. And you just kind of need to give yourself and other people the space to do that. So I think that, like I said, not being invested, not attaching too much to this relationship moving forward, and just seeing how it evolves, because you can already see that there's, a rift in the relationship, and maybe the nature of the relationship just becomes redefined. You're not as close as you were before, or you just get to a point where you drift apart. And I think that, it's really tough to go through that. And a lot of the times we try to avoid pain. So we think that the better thing to do would be to make it what it was like before. But things are always changing, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. And I think the more you can tune into how things are changing and how you can adapt with these changes in a way that allows you to stay connected to who you are, is kind of like the best that we can do. Easier said than done, because, it would be easier to just blame the friend and be like, you're problematic for thinking these things and saying these things and you need to change your mind. It might seem easier to do that or better to do that, but I don't think that it ultimately creates like a healthier relationship for the two people involved. And I don't think it helps any of the causes that you might care about by thinking that forcing someone to agree with you is better, because they might agree with you on a surface level, but they haven't really processed what they really think, and then you don't know how that's going to turn up later. So that's tough. I find that I often just have to stop myself in certain conversations about certain topics because everyone has their own agenda. I have my own agenda, even though I'm like, create a safe, intentional space. Of course, there's still going to be times where I'm like, I want to be considered right in this context, right? Everybody wants that. And I just have to pull back and be like, yeah, okay, you think what you think, I think what I think. Let's just focus on having a good time, because I think that how you think and what you think is going to change all the time. So just allow people to think what they think, allow yourself to think what you think, and see how it changes. Your conversations with people will allow those things to develop. And I think that being able to give each other the space to do that is how we actually make progress, rather than insisting that things be a certain way or be according to our standard or some arbitrary standard. It's like, how can we just better support each other? And sometimes you can't be like the support that someone else might need in being really problematic in their political views, and you just have to take a step back. It's unfortunate, especially if it's someone that you really cared about. But yeah, I guess it's finding a balance between having like a healthy inner circle and then also being exposed to people who have different views than you. You don't need to like challenge yourself by being friends with people who say and do and think really fucked up things, but know that you are going to come in contact with people who don't think the same way as you. And like, how can you better manage that? I guess that's kind of like my thoughts on that, because it's really scary, I think, how divided politically people can become, and so easily as well. I heard so many stories over COVID when I was in Australia about people becoming estranged from their friends and family members about, all these different political issues just because of the information they were being exposed to on their phone. Like this little square in your pocket is connecting you with people, but then also dividing people as well. And I think it's really important to exercise critical thinking and to also just like minimize your exposure to really politically charged news, and to maybe like hang out with people who also do the same, because it doesn't actually add anything to your experience of the world, and it doesn't make you more effective at like combating the issues that are at the root of all of these political discussions. Like, you're not better equipped to dismantle racism or the patriarchy by getting fired up in your room by yourself over different news articles about how unjust the world is. Like, we know that it's fucked up. I don't need the details. I need to know how I can, thrive in this environment and how I can support and help other people. And feeling shit about it doesn't help in that process. And it is very difficult to see that when you are constantly exposing yourself to that information. But it's like so addictive, like it literally changes the chemistry of your brain. It can be so hard to break, because we also, while we are living in this hellscape that's being fed to us on our phones, we lose the ability to be connected to the present moment, to be grateful for the things in our life that maybe aren't so fucked up and any privileges that we might have. And then we lose energy that could be channeled towards actually like nurturing, empowering, and supportive connections. So it's not about like doing this or doing that, but understanding like the spectrum of experience and the degrees of like, attachment, detachment, severity, non-severity, problematicness, and finding a balance that works for you personally and also allows you to facilitate like empowering others as well. And it's going to be different for everyone. So that's why I encourage myself to like find that balance for myself. I encourage other people to do that too. It's not about me saying like, this is what I do and it's going to work for you too. I'm like, this is what I do. Maybe there's things that work for you. Maybe it will help you figure out what will work for you. Maybe it doesn't work for you at all, But yeah, I think that this is going to be a very common theme moving forward. A lot of just political divisiveness, and for what? It's just sad because it's like, who does it benefit? It doesn't benefit like the people who actually need change in order to live a better life. It doesn't help the people that are emotionally exhausted from being exposed to such negative news all the time, or from having all these arguments and debates that don't go anywhere. The only people that it helps is like tech billionaires who are profiting off, the time and attention that people are spending, and the news outlets that are using clickbait to drive up their advertising revenue, or like the companies that are using these politically charged ideas to make people vulnerable so they can sell more shit that people don't need. It's just the same thing over and over. And it doesn't mean that buying things is bad or making things is bad, but like, how are you doing it? And are you actually helping anyone in the process? Or are you just doing like the most base level sort of like marketing or sort of scam business tactics to enrich yourself at the expense of society at large? I don't know. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. Please follow me on Instagram at AmberAkilla, at friend.crush. Subscribe to the YouTube, follow the podcast. I'm going to keep doing episodes until I think around like May, and then probably take like summer off of the podcast so I can just like reframe my approach. I really appreciate everyone who's been tuning in and writing in. I'm excited for the future, even though sometimes I'm overwhelmed with existential doom. This is just the nature of being alive, I think. Drink lots of water. Tell your friends and family that you love them. Go be a better person. Stay hot and having fun. I'll speak to you soon. Love you.